Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Vasquez here, coming to you live. I mentioned in some of my recent videos that I had to do some stuff that I didn't want to do, like hassle with one of my attorneys. I realize that sounds like a small thing, and in the scope of the world, of course, it is a small thing. But for me, that interpersonal dynamics, those interpersonal dynamics are pretty exhausting. So anyway, I had to create this big structure around it, even though it turned out to not be such a big deal, at least in a sense. But anyway, that's a whole different story. So part of my reward, and this came about for a couple different reasons, but part of what I needed to do and the way that I rewarded myself for dealing with this stuff that I didn't want to deal with is yesterday I went and purchased a new piece of art, which I'm very happy with, and you can see it behind my chair here. I'll show you a close-up picture of it in just a moment. And so for the past, let's say 48 hours, I've been thinking about art. And so right now in this video, I'm going to talk about art, and especially how to purchase art, because of the few things that I want to say, I think I have 5 things that I want to say right now. But one of the things I want to say is that a lot of people talk about art. They consider themselves to be supporters of art. They consider themselves to be patrons of the art and all that kind of stuff, but they don't actually pay money to support art. Art stores, artists, painters, sculptors, whatever. So that's apparently bothered me for decades, because I remember the first real piece of art that I purchased, I think I was like 28 years old or something like that. I was living in Seattle, and just walking through like a public square or a public market in Seattle, and this guy had painted this watercolor of, I think it was a pear, and I think that was the first piece of art that I remember right now that I purchased directly from the artist. I think it was like $50, and I thought that was pretty cool. Because even then I was aware of something that bothered me, and maybe it bothered me within my own self. Actually, I had purchased a few pieces of like little handmade things before, but anyway, this was my first piece of like what felt like to me like my first piece of legitimate art from an artist who was actually selling his own work. But something that had bothered me was the idea of talking about art and saying, oh yeah, I support the arts and all this kind of stuff, and not paying for it. So I kind of had to put my money where my mouth was, literally, and purchase this painting from this guy. It was actually quite large. It was like a poster size. But anyway, as I recall, like I said, that was the first piece of art that I actually purchased in real life and living time from the actual artist. So I'm going to talk about how to purchase art, and I'm not trying to be like anybody's expert, but I do know a few things, and I've learned a few things, and I learned all this stuff on my own. I mean, nobody taught me this stuff. But so one of the things I wanted to say was, if you think that you love art, then at some point you got to put your money where your mouth is and pay for it. Like when I was growing up back in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have any. We had a little bit of art in our house, like a few pictures, but they were just like reprints, so it was about as generic as you could get. I remember we had a reprint of Georgia O'Keeffe, one of her orchids, but that was about the extent of it. Later, my dad had a few pieces of art, and it was legit art from living artists. And he had some good pieces, but he also had some fakes. So I'm very clear that he had some fake pieces that were originally possibly from Spain, but more likely from France. And they probably had some meaning for him. They're rather generic pieces, but they were very clearly copies of the original, and that's kind of cheap, I mean, he had the money to buy real stuff, so go ahead and buy real stuff. So I thought that was rather cheap of him. he had the money to buy real art, but he just bought these little fake dinky copies, and I thought that's just lame. So, number one, if art is a value to you, then pay for it and buy it and have stuff that you enjoy and support the cycle of art, which is creation, selling, somebody gets to enjoy it, and then eventually they resell it, they get tired of it, they relocate, they have to relocate internationally, or they die off and then their kids don't care about the piece and then they resell it to an antique shop. I mean, that's basically the cycle of art. So you can participate in that. You know, that's part of supporting art, is either supporting the artists or supporting the markets or supporting the stores or doing something. And so I consider myself to hold art as a value. And so for that reason, I participate in that cycle. I never really thought of it that way, but that's how it occurs to me right now. So number one, put your money where your mouth is. Number two, try to buy real art when you can. And I know it's not always possible. I mean, if you look at that, I have a picture behind me that it's not real. It's a copy. But I haven't been able to find anything. I haven't been able to find the original. It was just kind of a chance thing. I just took a picture of a picture basically and printed it. And with all due respect for the artist, I think it was probably computer generated anyway. So I don't have, this big mountain of respect for this particular piece, but I do enjoy it, and it's not as legitimate as I would like for it to be. So maybe that's the third thing that I'm going to say is, number one, put your money where your mouth is. Number two, engage in the cycle of art. Maybe those are the same. I guess it probably is the same. So participate in art. Oh, yeah, that's right. And try to buy real stuff, not just, copies. The other two things that I wanted to say about art, the other two things I wanted to say are the things that I've already said about wine. So if you saw my video about wine, then you're going to see me right now repeat what I've already said about wine, because it applies exactly to art. So you might, there's some level of mysticism about wine and what's a good wine and should you buy the wine and is it worth the price and all that kind of stuff. So remember what I said before, and this is from the actor and comedian John Cleese, because he was the original source of this idea, for me anyway. And he said, a good wine is a wine that you like and that you're willing to pay for. And the same thing is true of art. So a good piece of art is a piece of art that you like and that you are willing to pay for. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. However, in my case, for me, I have to add a third thing, which makes number 5 on my list of topics for today. And that is, it has to have meaning. So I'm aware that for some people, the meaning or the significance of a piece of art might be in its retail value. Like, so they buy it and then they think in 20 years it's going to have value. I'm not an art investor. I buy what I like. But I'm certainly, I know that some people are investors in art. I'm certainly not, and I would never want to be. If I was like, well, it's not my game, and I hope it never is. But for me, the meaning that I find in art is it has to mean something to me in my life at the moment, and hopefully, forever. And that piece that I just bought yesterday, you can see it hanging right here. I'll show you a close-up of it. I looked at it and I thought, wow, that's a classic piece of art. It's a recurrent motif. I mean, this isn't the only piece like that, of course. But that's a recurrent motif. It's a hunting motif. So, like I said, I think good criteria for purchasing art is you have to like it. No one else has to like it. But if you're going to pay for it, obviously you should like it, and it should be in your budget. And it should have meaning. For some people, that's a financial meaning, like they think in 20 years it'll increase in value. I would consider that a really lame way to use art and a really lame way to use money, but whatever, some people do it. So for me, it has to have like an emotional and of course an intellectual component. So the emotional and intellectual component of this new piece right here that I just bought yesterday is that it signifies it's a hunting piece. It's birds and a rabbit that apparently have been hunted successfully and put on a table. So number one, I can appreciate it as a classic motif. Number two, I can appreciate it kind of as a masculine motif because commonly men are engaged in hunting. And when I was a kid, growing up in Texas, we certainly did a lot of hunting and fishing. So it has meaning in that sense. However, the meaning that it had, like, I actually left the store. I looked at it and I thought, wow, that's a classic piece. And the price was reasonable. And then I left the store and I went to another store and just to kind of see if they had anything better. I mean, I wasn't like in love. It wasn't like love at first sight. I liked it, but I didn't love it. But then I came back and looked at it again and I thought, wow, now I understand what this piece means for me. And what the piece means for me is that I consider it to represent a necessary but ugly transition in the sequence of life or a part of life. And so, for example, it's birds, and I think it's like 3 or 4 birds. Let's say it's 3 birds and a rabbit. Everybody's going to say they love birds. Birds, cute, bird hunting, bird watching. Everybody gets out their binoculars and they look at the birds and they listen to the birds and they say, oh, I love birds. Yeah, right. So people love living birds. Well, a lot of everybody, just about, unless you're strictly, vegan or vegetarian. But a lot of people eat birds. Quail, pheasant, dove. I used to go dove hunting when I was a kid growing up in Texas. I had my own shotgun, of course. But people eat chicken and duck and turkey. So on the one hand, we love living birds, and they're kind of cute and fun if you've ever had chickens. And then we also love to eat those birds. But the transition from a living cute bird to a bird on your plate is a dead bird or a dead animal. Same thing with rabbits. Everybody says, oh, rabbits are cute. And then every once in a while, if you're cold, especially, you want to eat like a rabbit stew over here. Well, the transition between this cute, funny, furry rabbit over here and the rabbit that's in your stew is a dead rabbit. And so that's what's, depicted in the painting. And so again, when I looked at this painting a second time, other than, it's a classic motif, it's a hunting motif, it's a masculine motif, it reminds me of going hunting when I was a kid, is that what it represents for me is kind of like the ugly truth of transitional states that are a necessary part of life. So again, the transition between a cute, fuzzy animal here and an animal that you get to eat and support your life with biologically is a dead animal in the middle that's kind of distasteful, or you don't want to think about it, or you don't want to look at it. I mean, I don't even like killing fish, but I certainly eat fish. I remember one time, this was a long time ago, this was back when I was still living in Houston, Texas. I went fishing with my men's group and I thought, yeah, we're gonna go fishing and we're gonna catch our own fish and fillet the fish and then fry the fish, and we're gonna be, macho men. And I chickened out. Like I think we caught some fish and then it was like time to cut them up and fillet them and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, couldn't do it. So I'm aware that I eat fish, but I had a hard time like actually killing and carving up the fish to eat it at that time. This was back in 2000. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was like 2002. Anyway, that's when it occurred to me. I had been, hunting and fishing as a kid, but as an adult, it became actually more difficult for me. So again, that's what it represents to me. And so, for example, like starting a business, everybody has the ideal of a business. You want to be autonomous, you want to make a product, you want to give a service or something like that. Yeah, that's the ideal. But you have to go through this ugly transition, and that's what this painting represents to me, is what I call the ugly but necessary transition. You have an ideal here, you have to go through an ugly transition here, and then you get what you want on the other side. Same thing, I mean, you could apply that to anything. uh, even exercise and being healthy, you know. You have the ideal of being healthy over here, but you have to go through that ugly transition, and then you get what you want over here. So again, when I looked at that painting and I thought, wow, it kind of represents the ugly but necessary transitional period of life. I thought, wow, that's what it means to me, and so I'll buy it. I have, of course, purchased a few other pieces of art. Sometimes I just like them or whatever. I've got one that I have on the wall here. I can't show it to you right now unless I like reverse the camera, but I'll just take a picture of it and I'll put it into the video. It's just a picture of it's a painting, I presume. Could be like a charcoal or crayon or whatever. But I think it's a painting of a pencil, and it's a worn down pencil that's been used down to its nub. And of course that works for me. It has meaning because I'm a writer and I've written, you know, however many books and hundreds of articles and things like that. So again, I like it, I could afford it, and it has meaning for me. It wouldn't have meaning for my wife because she's not a writer. But like I looked at it and I said, wow, that's me. I gotta have it. So I bought that in Spain from whatever market down the street. I actually remember where it was. It was in Orense, Spain. But that's a good example of a piece. I liked it, I could afford it. It came with a frame. That's the other thing about buying art, is that a lot of times the frame actually costs more than the art. So I remember when we were living in Barcelona, I bought a watercolor. It's actually a batik, or I think it's either batik or batik. I'm not sure. It's a painting process that involves wax and all this kind of stuff. But I bought this piece of art at the local market. I think it was on a Sunday. And I think I'm gonna guess that I paid $400 for it or something like that. But the frame was actually $800. So anyway, when you buy art, you also want to think about the frame, because sometimes the frame costs more than the art itself. And the frame was perfect. Obviously, you can buy a cheap frame if you want. But if you want to buy, at times, sometimes the appropriate frame for a piece of art is a cheap piece of wood. It doesn't have to be more than that. But some pieces of art look better in a, you know, frame of painted wood and looks like gold or whatever. And that's what this painting needed. So I paid more for the frame than I did for the art. So this particular picture of this pencil was already framed, and the frame was actually great for it. So I bought it. So anyway, that's two pieces. I'm gonna show you one or two more pieces that I've purchased that are good examples of, did I like it? Could I afford it? And did it have meaning for me? So here's a piece that I actually bought in what turned out to be my last trip to Paris. This was back in 2017. So, and this piece was a little bit more expensive. I don't even remember what I paid for it. Let's assume, I'm guessing, the thing is I didn't even have the money in my account. I had to pay for it with two different transfers. So that's part of the reason why I don't remember the price for it, is because I had to pay for it twice, so to speak. But this piece was a little more expensive than I would want to pay, but I did, obviously I bought it. It's a bronze, it's original. It's probably the only piece like it. And it actually has the engraving here, very difficult to read. And even more difficult to read because it's probably in French, but it does say Paris. That's the last word. I'm kind of guessing that it may say that it was produced in 1938, but again, I can't really make it out. I don't know who the artist is. It's a bronze. I mean, this is the real deal. You can see the plaster of Paris still stuck to it. So this was, again, back in 2017, as I recall. It was winter, and I was really exhausted. And so we took a few days off from the routine. Again, we were living in Spain, so we just took a train to Paris. And I wanted to go to the antique market there, and then we, from there, went to Amsterdam for like 3 or 4 days, and then came back through Paris, and then back to Barcelona. So I saw this piece in a artist market, flea market, and this was like getting hit with a bolt of lightning. Like, I had to have this piece. And that's why I think I paid a little more for it than I would otherwise. So you can see it's basically a blacksmith, because you can see his hammer here, and he's got his chisel here, but he's a blacksmith who made a book. And that was totally me, right? So, like, for my books, I create them, I outline them, I research them, I do all the drawings. Like, so on my books, I do everything. I do everything. So I'm actually quite happy and proud of my books, and that's what makes me an authority, is because I am the author of my books. Contrasting to some, bullshitters who, use ghostwriters, and I know some people who use ghostwriters, and I got no respect for them. But I do everything in my books. If it's right, it's because I made it right. If it's screwed up, it's because I screwed it up. Or if it's a typo, it's because I missed it. But if I'm right because I worked to be right. And so when I saw this, a blacksmith, sitting next to his hammer and chisel, and here's another book. I don't even know if I saw that one before, but here's another book behind him, and he's got this big book here. I was like, that's me. That's my life. So I had to buy that one. Let's see. I guess I'll show you one more example, because this is one that I just bought last month in Mexico. And this is a little more chaotic, but I'll show you this one. So let me show it to you I'll show it to you how it is. This is obviously a bust, and I wanted to buy it even before I knew who it was. So the base of it actually turns, because it's screwed in at the bottom. So when I first saw it, it looked like this. It didn't have the guy's name. So I didn't even know who it was. I just thought, wow, it's kind of classic European style. I'll buy it and I think it was cheap. I don't even know what it was, but it wasn't that expensive. I bought this in Puebla, Mexico. And the guy told me it was a bronze, and it's obviously not a bronze. The guy didn't know. The guy who owned the store didn't know it. He didn't even know antiques. But it's not bronze. Even though it is metal, but it's not bronze. Anyway, the guy's name represented here is Gambetta. His first name is Leon, or not. I guess you could pronounce it Leon if you're an American, but maybe it is. In Spanish and French, it's probably more like Leon. But anyway, his first name is Leon, and his last name is Gambetta. I didn't even know who he was, but I'll tell you the two stories behind this particular piece. One is, and this is going to sound weird, but here it is. This is the meaning that it had to me. The meaning that it had to me is I looked at this. I was just, it's just a random antique store. And I looked at this piece and I thought, wow, I wonder what my life would have been like if that guy had been my uncle. Because I had two uncles. I had a maternal uncle and a paternal uncle, and they both sucked. I didn't like either one of them. And so it was just like a random thought. I thought, wow, what if that guy had been my uncle? Wonder if my life could have been better. Hopefully not worse, but maybe it could have been better. So anyway, that was the interest I had in the piece before even knowing who he is. So the second part of the meaning of this to me is that I looked him up. I looked up, who the hell is Leon Gambetta? I don't know who he is. Turns out he was, for a brief time, he was a politician in France after the Napoleon rise and fall. And for a few months, he was actually Prime Minister of France. So this was back in the early or mid 1800s. And he was a politician. He fought for whatever he thought was right. He was shot twice. One, apparently he shot himself by accident in the arm or something like that. And he died very young. He died when he was 44 of stomach cancer. So anyway, that's unfortunate. And I don't relate to him based on those things, other than he was a politician and fought for whatever he believed in. But the cool thing is that he, when he was a politician in France, sometimes he was popular and sometimes he wasn't popular. But at one point he had to exile himself from France to protect himself. and he exiled himself to San Sebastian, Spain, which happens to be probably my all-time favorite place in the whole world, and where I lived. Actually, that's where I wrote Inflammation Mastery. So Inflammation Mastery was actually revised and mostly rewritten in San Sebastian, Spain. So I thought that was super cool. And then I was even more happy that I paid whatever I paid for this. But again, it's an example of when you want to purchase a piece of art, do whatever you want. My criteria for purchasing art is I have to like it, like instinctively. But I'm not going to buy something just because I like it instinctively, probably. But I have to like it. It has to be a price that I can reasonably afford, and it has to have some type of meaning for me. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to resell this piece. It's a pretty cool piece. But I don't think I'm ever going to resell this and make money, and I don't even care. But it does have some meaning for me, insofar as he's a man who stood up and fought for what he believed in. He endured some physical accidents, and I certainly have as well. And he exiled himself to San Sebastian, Spain, which I think is awesome. If you see those big printed photos behind me, that's the port of San Sebastian, Spain. This one on this side, that's one of the two main beaches of San Sebastian, Spain. This is called the Concha. The other one is called, I don't even remember right now. It has kind of a weird name. It's kind of an ugly name, but I don't remember. This is the Concha, which just means shell, because it's shaped like a C, the letter C. So that's the big beach in San Sebastian, Spain. Gross, I think that was the name of the other, that's the name of the other beach in Spain. It also has a C shape, and it's the one that's popular with surfers because the waves are bigger. That's also the beach where I almost drowned in 2022. I talked about that on the website. But I was drowning. It's not like I could have drowned. I was in the process of drowning. And two surfers came and saved me. They actually had to save me twice. They came and saved me, and then they let me go. But then the tide took me out again, and then they had to come save me again. So anyway, that's the port of San Sebastian. That's the big beach of San Sebastian. The other one, gross. I don't have a photo of it, but a lot of people die there. And then that other one, that's Barcelona. The other one's Barcelona. So anyway, those are things I think about with regard to purchasing art. Number one, put your money where your mouth is. If you say that you love art, then engage in it. And that means putting your money where your mouth is. The same thing is true of music. If you love music, then go see a concert. Give your money to the people who are actually making the music that you love. So, number one, put your money where your mouth is. Number two, try to buy original art, because then you're more engaged, like in the core cycle of art, which is creation, selling, enjoyment, and then reselling. That's the cycle of art. And like I said, I just made that up, but apparently I think it's true. Number three, buy what you like and whatever you can afford, just like with wine. What makes a good wine? A good wine is one that you like and that you can afford. Number five in that cycle is, one way to connect with art is that it has some meaning for you. And, like I said, this one was a slam dunk for me. I saw this, I said, that's me. I'm the guy who busts ass with hammer and chisel to write these books. That's me. I gotta have it. So I bought it. I couldn't even afford it, apparently, on one of my credit cards. So I had to do a PayPal transfer, and then the other one was credit card. I remember that. And then, like I said, with this piece, this picture of a pencil, that would probably not have meaning for most people. Like I said before, it wouldn't have any meaning for my wife because she's not a writer. But I've been writing books and articles, for 30 years. And so for me, it has a lot of meaning, even as simple as it is. And this other thing about this bust of Leon Gambetta, I immediately liked it. First of all, I like antiques, especially European style antiques. I immediately liked it. The price was okay. But then I thought, wow, what if that guy had been my uncle? I wonder what my life would have been like if it had been different. Maybe it could have been better or worse. I'm not saying, he's not like my superhero or something. It's just kind of a visceral idea. And then when I studied more about him, like I said, the first time I bought it, I didn't even know it had his name on it because this thing was like twisted around. And then later I saw that it was Leon Gambetta, who survived a few injuries and personal attacks, just like I have. And then he self-exiled to San Sebastian, Spain, just like I did when I had to write this book. So I thought that was all cool. So one last time, and then I'm going to close this out. Put your money where your mouth is. Try to buy original art. Don't be a cheap ass like my own father and having the money and then buying cheap copies. I mean, that's just ridiculous. That's an insult to art. That's an insult to art, Put your money where your mouth is. Buy real stuff. Engage in the cycle of art. That's a better way it's a more accurate way to say it, more complete way to say it. Engage. If you love art and if you love music, engage with it. Buy the real stuff. Don't just copy it. Like it. Make sure it's within your budget. And, ideally it would have some meaning for you. Hope you're all doing well. Take care. That's the video for today. And I'll get this on the website as soon as I can. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Tendur di Paloma, Cucum Sapatinho, Wilson do Sandro também. Fofa com Jéssica. Cassivi que cuida na boa, como estira na minha nome, pra que cuna brinca com minha nome, de nome. Cassivi que cuida na boa, como estira na minha nome, pra que cuna brinca com minha nome, de Padilho, lembra a terra sagrada, Cacheu da Silva, a Vigêmea,